All right, all right. So let's get to it. Hi, everyone. Welcome, and thanks for joining us today for this new episode in the webinar series of Planned Postdocs. So the theme of today's seminar will be preparing early career researchers for jobs in academia. So my name is Matthias Benoit. I am a postdoc at Cold Spring Harbor Labs in New York, and I'm an active member of Planned Postdocs, and I will be moderating this webinar today. So just a brief introduction about today's seminar. So today's seminar will be an hour long. And we have today with us a great panel that will discuss how to navigate the academic job market as an early career researcher. So before introducing our panel, I would like to welcome Arif Ashaf, co-founder and chair of Planned Postdocs, who will present some recent updates about the Planned Postdoc initiative. Arif?
Yeah, thanks, Matt. Hello, everyone. I'm Arif Ashaf. I'm postdoc at University of Massachusetts Amherst and working with Michel Facet on cell polarity and asymmetric cell division, mostly in maize and Arabidopsis. I'm also the co-founder of Planned Postdoc group, and next few minutes, I'm going to introduce some of our activities we are doing in the last 1 year. So the idea of Planned Postdoc started with a conversation with Sunil, who is also a very good friend and postdoc in Michigan State University and co-founder of Planned Postdoc group. And we are talking about how every postdoc position is transient and we are constantly on the lookout for a more permanent job in either industry or academia. And that is the time when we started thinking about creating a common ground for Planned Postdocs where we can help each other as a community for our next career move. And that was the beginning, and it's been a year. So I will briefly go through what are the things we are doing recent times. So first of all, we have a very active Slack group where we have more than like 200 active members, and mostly we discuss about the job opportunities, application process, and interview, mostly helping each other. And for our official announcement, we usually use our official website and Twitter account. And mostly we post about the information about the webinar and what are the new jobs coming on. And recently we crossed like 2,000 followers in our Twitter account, so which is amazing. And to keep our job postings and job opening organized, we started an editable Google spreadsheet, which we call the job board. So where like all the Slack members, they can actually access that sheet and can update what are the new jobs is coming in the government, industry, academia, and anyone can actually add up the jobs. So which is actually a very nice way to organize that, all the jobs coming up. And not only that, in every month, at the end of the month, we post that on our Twitter account also. And another initiative we started is actually as early career researcher, we want to get some experience as a reviewer in the different journals. So we started the 3PRD, what we call like potential planned peer reviewer database. And so far, like more than 150 members actually registered with the interest to become the reviewer for different journals. So our plan is to send out this database to the editor-in-chief of the different journal and to think how these early career researchers can get experience and trained to become a reviewer for future. And today's webinar is actually part of our 4 webinars in each year, what we're doing. So each semester we are doing like 2 webinars, one for academic job and one for industry or government job. So today's webinar is part of that initiative. And finally, it's been a year, so we want to make our this group in more structured. So we are going to announce the leadership team today. So where I will actually serve as a chair, and Alison will help as a vice chair, and also Sandra will serve as a secretary. And soon we are going to announce our advisory board, and keep an eye for that. So with this, if you're interested, if you're not already a member of the Planned Postdocs, you can find the details from our plannedpostdocs.com. And with this, I would like to thank all the people, participants who registered for this webinar, and 4 of our amazing speakers who agreed to talk to us, and obviously Matt for volunteering. And finally, I would like to thank Sunil, who worked really hard to make it successful. So with this, I'd like to give it back to Matt to go further. Thanks, everyone.
Yeah, thank you, Arif. Please sign up to the Planned Postdoc. It's a fantastic community. It's really, really, really nice. Just please sign up. So to come back to today's webinar, so we'll basically be split into 2 different sessions. So in the first part of the webinar, Each panelist will have 6 minutes to talk about his or her experience in transitioning to an academic position, while the second part will be more dedicated to a Q&A session that will give you, the audience, the opportunity to interact with our speakers. So of course, they're happy to answer any question you might have or comment you might have about this experience of transitioning to an academic position. So throughout the webinar, including the first half where our speakers will talk about the experience, please submit your questions in the Q&A box, which is on, I think, at the bottom somewhere here, probably, of your Zoom. And we will select a question and then ask them to the speakers in the second part. If you want to interact further or to ask more details about the answer of one of our speakers, please raise your hand and we will be able to unmute you to basically keep the conversation going. So I think without further ado, I would like to introduce our first speaker, with Gabriela Auge. So Gabriela is a group leader at the Institute of Bioscience, Biotechnology and Translational Biology at the University of Buenos Aires in Argentina. Gabriela, the virtual stage is yours.
Thank you very much for the introduction, and thank you very much for the invitation to share my experience and my career path to get what I am today. What I want to do is to share briefly. Where is it? Here. A slide to show you my career path. I studied biotechnology. My background is molecular biology and biotechnology. After I graduated, I started a PhD in molecular biology and biotechnology. And soon, immediately after that, I started my first postdoc, a short postdoc in the same institution, all these in Argentina, in my home country. After my first postdoc, I ran out of funding and I applied for jobs outside of academia. I got a job as a field applications specialist in a lab supplier company. I worked there for some months. It was a really nice job with a very good pay, with opportunities to travel, but I didn't like it. The bench was calling me back. So I started looking for another postdoc opportunity. And in the middle of that, I got a contract to do a second postdoc, a longer postdoc, 4.5-year postdoc in the Department of Biology at Duke University. While I was working there, I learned many things. The thing is, at some point, I had to decide what to do with my life after that. So for many different reasons, I decided to return to my home country. So I started preparing an application for what we call the researcher career of the National Council in Argentina. This is an application. It's a very competitive application. And what you have to do is to think about the proposal, find a host lab and a host institution that can support your application. What I did at that moment was thinking about what I was doing and what I wanted to do, and find a PI that could support my application, a PI that have similar interests I had at that moment, and a work line that could complement my interests. So what I want to say is that I have a molecular biology background at the beginning. While I was doing my PhD, I'm focused on cell physiology, and I love physiology. and I went away a little bit of molecular biology. During my first postdoc, I started working in genetics. And in the second postdoc, I complemented my experience working on ecology, a little bit of evolutionary biology. I went back to molecular biology a bit too, but I wanted in my proposal to put all that together. So the lab that hosted me is a molecular biology lab. And as I consider myself a seed physiologist, I thought it was a good match for me to further my, my experience. This position is a 10-year position. It has several steps. The first steps, the position I got is not a completely independent position. You are hosted in somebody else's lab. So if you want to be completely independent, you have to keep applying for other positions. In this search for more independence is that I applied for a group leader position at the University of Buenos Aires. This was in 2017. So in 2018, I got this position, but as I did a short stay in Japan, like 6 months, I couldn't take that position until 2019. And I slowly started working on building my own work group. And I'm in the middle of that. While I was working on my proposal to apply for the researcher position of the National Council, I felt that all these paths, all these research paths provided me of different experiences that contributed strongly to develop different points of view that could enrich my interest in seed biology. In addition to that, and in fact, my first job after college wasn't in research. In 2002, I started working, I took a teaching position at the university where I got my degree. I worked as a teaching assistant in plant physiology and then general biology and molecular and cell biology for several years until 2010, where the lecturer decided to leave the post. So I applied for that position, and in 2011, I started working as a lecturer in plant physiology in the National University of Quilmes. And I maintained that position until I went to the US. And when I came back to Argentina, I resumed that position as lecturer, and I'm still doing that work right now. So I can say that I have a very long teaching experience that complements my research experience. And I think when I think about all my career path, I think that having this teaching experience contributed positively to every research application I have done in my career. Because I mean, a researcher can be a good researcher, a good scientist, but not all scientists are good teachers. And to be a good teacher, you have to work, you have to learn, you have to keep improving your teaching skills, and improving your teaching skills helps you improving the way you show your work, the way you communicate your work, the way you write your proposals. So I think in my case, having this long teaching experience was very positive in the outcome, in getting my position as a postdoc in the US, in getting my position as a researcher of the National Council, and getting my position as a group leader. In Argentina, the research position doesn't require for you to teach, but I really like teaching and I keep doing that.
Thank you.
Yes.
Sorry, I think I've got plenty of questions already, so we can probably come back to that a bit later too in the Q&A, because especially plenty of questions about teaching. So I think we can come back to that.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Great, thanks. Thank you, Gabriela.
I wanted to say one more thing, that I did apply for other positions around the world, and I think that my teaching experience was taken always positively in my applications. And that's it.
Sounds good.
I could keep talking, but
thank you so much, Gabriela. Sorry, I had to interrupt you. That's very interesting. Thanks a lot for sharing your experience, and we'll for sure come back to that in a minute during the Q&A. So next, we will move to our second speaker of the day, who's Phil Carella. So Phil is a group leader in the Department of Cell and Developmental Biology at the John Innes Center in the UK. Phil, it's great to have you today.
Thanks. I'm happy to be here. I didn't prepare any slides or anything. I figured I would just chat, and I'm really happy to answer questions afterwards. That might be the easiest. But I can just briefly go through sort of my career path and you know, some things that come into mind. So I finished my PhD. Everything's felt like it's gone really quick in hindsight, but now, you know, when I think about it, when I was in it, everything feels long and stressful. But I was having fun, so that's always important. I finished my PhD in 2016. I did my PhD at McMaster University in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada. Small university, nothing too huge. And then right after that, maybe I finished, and then 1 month later, I was off to Sainsbury Lab at the University of Cambridge to start my postdoc. And there I was working on something that was sort of brand new. And I've continued that on as a group leader now, but I thought it was important to try something new and sort of get my hands on a field that was emerging and not much was known about it. And I could sort of get a foothold that way and have a niche for myself. And the niche is very, well, not very crowded, but of course things are taking off. So yeah, I did the postdoc, started in 2016. That was on a grant that was for 2 years. And then, you know, during the middle of that, I secured a Canadian postdoc fellowship to extend my stay for another 2 years. And then I recently got the position here at the John Innes Center as a group leader. I think I got the offer like maybe December of last year, and then started in August. So setting up the lab now during coronavirus stuff. So it's a lot of fun. Right, I'm just looking at some of the questions that you had sent before. So how I strategized to get to this position, I think I always had it in mind as a goal, and this is something that I wanted to do and something I was interested in. So I didn't forget about it. And I'm imagining that it's like looming in the back of everyone's minds all the time as a postdoc. I started preparing the application package and the ideas really early. And that's because I was talking to people in the Institute who had just gotten offers, and they were saying that they were on the job market for 4 years. And I thought, okay, if I'm on the job market for 4 years, let's burn some of these some of these early years and get the learning out as soon as possible. So they were sort of a resource in talking to people who had gotten jobs. Certainly my postdoc advisor was super helpful and insightful, and yeah, really helped me. Even well, one, he was good enough to like let me take parts of the project with me and was super supportive in that way. And I think that's important because you need to maintain a relationship with people afterwards, and you don't want to start off on a contentious note, and you need support. You're always going to need support from people. Yeah, colleagues, everyone in the Sainsbury lab is really great and supportive. I was also lucky enough to have there's a new group leader at Sainsbury Lab at Vichmalru, and she started her lab sort of halfway through my postdoc as I was looking to apply for jobs. So I saw how she built the lab and developed things, and the way she talked about ideas, and that was super helpful. And when I was on the job market, I was asking questions and just having informal chats just about things, expectations and whatever. And some of the best advice, if you take nothing else from this, is to, like, one, you have to like what you're doing. You have to be passionate about it. Otherwise it's going to show. And you have to be yourself. I think it's hard to be anything else. So if you go to interviews or if you're applying for something, I think being authentic and being passionate, I think this is important, because you want to try to fit, like, what do they want from me? What are they looking for? I want to get this job. But at the end of the day, you also want to you want to be in a good environment. And I think the only way for that is if you're yourself in a spot that's really compatible with you. I'm looking through things. Tips: if you get an interview, don't drink all the coffee. People will offer you coffee and water, and you want to drink it, and you get a headache, and you got to go to the bathroom like 20 times in a day. So we can talk about specific things like that. But yeah, there's some funny things. And if you have these Zoom sort of pre-interviews, the first couple of times I interviewed, certainly I felt like I'm sure I had this deer in the headlights look when there's a panel of people, they're all asking me questions, and I was probably like, oh. So it's a learning process. And yeah, I'm happy to answer questions later on. 1 minute left. Perfect. I'm looking at the time, and yeah, I can't add. What else am I thinking of? Similar different applications. Yeah, so I applied to, you sort of take the shotgun approach and you see what's out there. And a lot of people will send a lot of applications to different departments to sort of play the field a little bit. But you should also be thinking of where you would want to go, where you would fit in. And you should think about your network and where people know you. Let's say I had more success rate in Canada, where people were familiar with me, and in the UK and Europe, where people are more familiar with my work, and less so in the US. Plus, I'm working on plant evolution and really not agriculturally relevant, so maybe there's something there as well.
Sounds good, Phil. Thank you very much. I'm pretty sure we'll have questions about how to identify labs that would be a good fit for, to host you for your research, and we'll have questions about that later. Thank you very much. So now it's time to have our third speaker of the day with Thelma Madzima. Hi, Thelma. Thelma is an assistant professor in plant molecular and cellular biology at the School of STM, Division of Biological Science at the University of Washington, Bothell in the USA. Thelma, we are very happy to have you today.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. Happy Postdoc Appreciation Week, guys, to everybody. Yeah, so I did my postdoc in the McGinnis lab at Florida State University. And in that lab, we study epigenetics using maize as a model organism. And I had a pretty long postdoc. It was 6 years. But it worked out pretty well for me because it was one postdoc. And so, with time, I could start to develop my own projects, right? But I don't want to make it sound like I was lucky the whole time, because it was really stressful, right? Because as funding changes, you never know if you're going to have to move. But in the end, things did work out. And I really do think that if you can do a long postdoc, funding and fit being compatible, then I think it's a really good option to take. So when I was interviewing with Dr. McGinnis, one thing that stuck out to me and why I actually was really excited to join her lab is because she was also a new PI. And some people tell you not to join a lab with a new PI, but she had gone through the whole process of like trying to figure out what projects to take. And so she kept saying in the interview, hey, this could be a potential project. Even though none of those panned out, 6 years is a long time, the fact that she was always considering what I would take is really important. And so if you haven't had those conversations with your PI, it's really important to have those. So about 2 years into my my position, I started getting all these emails from my PI and other PIs saying, there's a job open, you should apply. And I didn't feel ready, but apparently there hadn't been jobs for a while. And so people were like, okay, now that universities are hiring, you gotta get on it. And so I went on the job market, and I was a finalist somewhere, and I went through the whole emotional roller coaster associated with getting a rejection in the end. But it was probably one of the best experiences in that whole process because it forced me to put a package together. I wasn't completely excited about the project I was proposing, and I think it shows, right? But then I also was able to reflect, and in reflection, I was able to say, what do I want? And when I go back up on the market, what do I have to fix, right? And so those are the things that I focused on. And so I always try to tell my friends who are postdocs that you have to just start putting an application out together, right? And just, it's like kind of feeling out the process. And I know we always try to delay. We never think we're ready, but it's like, when you are really, really ready, or when funds run out, you want to have your packet ready, right? So just go ahead. If you think you're kind of ready, just go ahead and put an application out. If it works, you get a job. If it doesn't, you can try again the next year, right? As a postdoc, I mentored several students, rotation graduate students, and that ended up working out really well because the position I'm in right now at the University of Washington, Bothell is a primarily undergraduate campus, right? And so I am interacting with undergraduate students a lot. Unlike many people, I was open to two types of campuses. So I was open to an R1 institution, and I was also open to a primarily undergraduate institution. Not everybody is like that. And so you have to know yourself, right? And so you have to know what you are willing to, what you want to do and what you don't want to do. In my opinion, I saw pros and cons of both of them. The University of Washington Bothell ended up working out really perfectly for me because even though it is primarily undergraduate institution, it is still part of the University of Washington system, and they really still value research. And so I don't feel that I had to give up my research over teaching. Okay. Just looking through some of the things, resources. Some of the best resources I had were other younger professors on the campus. I was lucky in the fact that when I started my postdoc position, they had done a cluster hire. And so there's so many young professors that were near peer, right? And so they shared their materials with me, they shared their experiences with me. I had to prepare a teaching talk without any teaching experience. And that is where teaching track professors come in, also known as lecturers. And they have mastered active learning, they have mastered, inclusive learning and active learning techniques. And so I got a lot of tips just from one of the lecturers in the department who gave me their time, right, and walked me through it. At that point, I had given my research talk so much, I was more not confident about my teaching talk, but my research talk I could do anytime. Do I have a minute or two?
You have 1 minute left.
Okay, so just real quick, be authentic. Just as Phil said, I cannot overemphasize that. That really sticks out. Also, too, don't neglect your diversity statements, right? And you guys are coming in a culture where people are now being more aware about inclusion, and those statements are going to matter. You have to put those, as much effort as you put into your research statement into those. And BS comes through, so people can tell when you're not being authentic. And so it's important to have that. And also too, I just want to tell you that, you know, by the time you get an interview or on-site interview, they've already vetted your research to some extent. The campus visit, a lot of it is about fit. There's a problem with that when it comes to inclusion things, especially if the committee and the faculty are not diverse, but at the same time, you should be able to hold a conversation, right? And so a lot of it actually is a personality test more than as much as a research test as well. All right, and I'll answer questions later. Thanks, guys.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Thelma. Yeah, we'll have great question about, you know, the themes of the application package and how to write great research statement and diversity statement later. Thank you very much. And it's already time to move to our fourth and last speaker of the day. So we are very happy to have Michael Muszynski today with us. So Michael is an assistant professor at the Department of Tropical Plant and Soil Sciences at the University of Hawaii at Manoa in the USA. Michael, very happy to have you today.
Great, thank you for having me. I'm going to share my screen, so I can say yes, I guess. I just have a few slides. So it's always great to be invited to something that has early career on it at my age. So I think it's also interesting to see that you know, everyone's career path can be nonlinear, and mine certainly was not. And so I'm starting my description of my career after my PhD and my postdoc, which is actually before paved roads were invented. So after my postdoc, I actually got a job in industry. And so I was hired as a senior research associate at a company called Pioneer Hybrid, which is a biotech and plant breeding company in Iowa. And I had never really considered industry work before, but as I was finishing up my postdoc, I didn't really feel ready for an academic position. I was looking at other postdocs, and then this position came open, and it was such a good fit for me that I ended up moving into industry, and that lasted for another 10 years. So I rose in the ranks in the company to a research scientist, which means I had a small group, but the groups, the research scientists worked together as a bigger team. And then I moved to another company, Syngenta Seeds, for about a year. Collectively, this, like I said, was about a decade. And then after that, due to company consolidations and other changes, I felt the call to go back to academia. I had, well, part of it is either be fortunate or had some foresight, and that during my industry work, I had maintained really good connections with the academic community. I was going to conferences, I was collaborating, I was publishing. But to get academic position was quite difficult since I had never written a grant, because I never had to. And so what worked out for me was I ended up getting an adjunct professor position at Iowa State University. So sort of the stars aligned at that time. One of the researchers faculty at Iowa State needed someone to help in his project. At the same time, the department lost a faculty member, so teaching, there was a need for a teacher of genetics, which is what my PhD is in. And so I left industry and moved to academia as an adjunct professor that was paid partly by soft money on grants, and then also by the university. And that was a really great experience because it gave me time to adjust my thinking from sort of industry, very applied type of research questions to more discovery, basic biology. And plus it also gave me really good experience with teaching. So from that position, tenure track positions opened at Iowa State, of which I applied to. And I will say, even though I had been there for 7 years, I was not their first choice. but their first choice elected not to accept the position, and so I was number 2 and was quite happy to be number 2. So then I was assistant professor at Iowa State for a few years, but then family things happened, and I ended up moving to the University of Hawaii at Manoa, and have been here since 2015. This was the road I took to get to where I am. I think I'll offer a few words of things to consider in reflecting back on my path to get where I am here. And so, you know, I would, even though this this webinar is geared towards academic positions, I would, you know, challenge the people listening on in the postdocs to think about more broadly about what you can do with your PhD. That there are other positions beyond academia that can be very fulfilling, and that I think a lot of us think we have a plan that we're going to have a position and a career that we'll have for the rest of our lives. I actually thought that was the case when I was in my first job. And then lots of life things happen, some things which you can control, lots of things you can't. And so I think my time in industry, what it taught me to do is to think flexibly about things, to have a plan B and maybe a plan C. It's never too early to think about these things. Your training and to think independently and to solve problems with your PhD and your postdoc experience, you know, makes you a very strong candidate for positions in industry, in government policy, scientific writing communication, business, legal things. There's lots of options out there for you. So, you know, if I think you're not 100% sure that academia is where you want to go, think about other options as well. And you can try them. That's the other thing. You can try them, see if you like them, and if you don't, you can change tack. Network, collaborate, interact. I think other people have said before that Phil had said, you know, the people that knew him is sort of what opened doors for him. And certainly I could have sat in Pioneer Hybrid and got paid a good salary and got good bonuses and done what was expected, and that was it. But I networked with people, I went to conferences, I collaborated with people, we published together, stay connected. It's what loops you into opportunities that are that may be coming up. And then plus people know that you're a known entity to certain people as well. Certainly that helped me get my adjunct position at Iowa State University. So many people there knew me and I had collaborated with or seen them at conferences. If you have to make a choice about something, try to make a choice that opens doors rather than closes doors. So again, the example I'll give is in industry, I could have said, I don't want to publish. The company didn't care if I published or not. In fact, it was a little bit discouraged, but I felt like, no, this is really interesting. I want to be connected to the larger community. I want to contribute. So I'm going to take the extra effort to publish. That kept me, my work in, you know, the community's eyes. If you have to make a choice, if you have to make a career change, if you want to, you know, if you have to do something, your money runs out, the company says, thank you, we've liked having you, you're no longer wanted. You want to have more options after that step than fewer options. If you're looking for academic positions, get some teaching experience. I don't know if, you know, being a graduate TA is good, but it's not the experience I think they're looking for in your first academic position, right? They want to know, can you put a syllabus together? Can you organize a series of lectures? You know, what you're thinking about running a class, face-to-face, online now, what are your plans for active teaching? And if you don't know what this is, go talk to people where you're at that are doing this. Your PI should be your first stop for that. But, you know, ask your PI, hey, can I lecture for you for, you know, part of your class you're teaching? And there's all these skills you end up needing to run a lab, if that's what you end up doing, that you don't have opportunities to really learn about, but then you have to learn on the job. And so if you get some of these skills early, then when you get your first academic position, you have to hit the ground running. So, you know, managing people, you will have students, graduate students, postdocs, maybe a technician. Everybody has different personality types. That's what makes the world a wonderful place. But sometimes they clash, and you have to figure out how to manage people. Budgets, you know, that's a big thing you have to figure out. And practice your persuasive writing skills, which is what grant writing is all about. It's very different than writing scientific articles. You know, write your own grant. Ask your PI to help write grants. Ask to review grants that are being written by other people in the university to give feedback to them. They will want that, but then you can see how the writing is different than what you would do for writing a paper. So I think
Thank you, Michael.
that's enough for me. So.
Great, thank you very much. That's very fascinating. And I know we have plenty of questions about how to navigate between industry and academia. So plenty of questions to come. So with that, we will now move to the Q&A sessions. So thank you very much to our audience for submitting great questions. I see plenty of questions right there in the question box. And I think I will actually start with this one. Which is really, you know, related to really the beginning of the process, the transition process. So what important skills and experience can you build as a postdoc to really facilitate the transition to academia? So who is willing to take this one?
I think just, again, management, right? Working with diverse groups, right? Everybody, like Michael said, everybody's going to have a different, different personalities, right? And having to be able to manage those type of dynamics is really important. Yeah, so I think that's my response to that.
So if I can make, so, you know, I applied for academic positions when I decided to leave industry. I applied for many of them, and for some, I got close, but never got an interview. And I had friends on the search committees, and the main problem I had was I had never had to write for funding or gotten any funding. So I think as a postdoc, if you can write grants and get a little bit of funding, if you can get your own funding or say, you know, I wrote part of this grant with my PI, it's experience you need to be functional as an academic, as a PI in your own lab. And so a university sees that, a search committee is going to see that as they know how to do this, they've got some experience doing this, and that's going to, I think, put you at a little higher level. So.
Great, yeah, I agree. The sort of the core competencies are like your papers. Can you get any amount of money, even if it's a small fellowship or something to support yourself? And then obviously your ideas. Yeah, that's, and then aside from that, it's just finding fit and all that fun stuff.
Yeah, mentoring students to work with students while you're a postdoc.
So I was an international student, so I was on the visa system, and I know that like, so a lot of us international people in the US cannot apply for your own funding, right? And so we can't even get the NSF postdoc award or anything like that. So that, you know, in itself is very difficult, but you can write a grant with your PI. And even though you can't be the one submitting for the most part, if you have a good relationship with your PI and if they're doing the right thing, they will make that clear too in their letter of support. But put it in yours, because sometimes we don't even really get to the letters. Make sure you say, I wrote this, or I wrote 75% of this grant, right?
Yeah, that's good advice. Thank you all. So I would move to the next question, which is related to the preparation of the application package. So can you share some advice with us about how to write an impactful research statement and an impactful diversity statement? Who wants to chip in?
I can
Gabriela?
go first. Yeah, what I did was to think about the questions I wanted to answer and find one question that was catching my interest the most and work around that and try to put your experience in that proposal. Like, I did this and I think it's going to be important to answer this question because of this. And set short and long-term goals. Once you have clear your questions and your goals, I think that the proposal will flow. But at least have that in mind. And then give your proposal to readers for them to critique your proposal and be prepared to be praised or be to have some hard critical points of view of your proposal and work around that to make it, to improve it, to make it better. And regarding the diversity statement, so I'm a Latin American scientist, so I know firsthand what it is to be a minority. So I could put all my experience in the diversity statement, and I try always to be in a diverse environment and try to work with people and programs that are aimed to increase diversity in your workplace. So for me it was easy, but try to be to engage in diversity programs and inclusion programs in your institution. That would be the best way to understand what diversity and inclusion is, and then work with people working in diversity offices and inclusion offices to ask them about how you could be involved and what would be a good statement.
Right. And I want to add to that. So is it an echo? Okay. So I so I identify as a Black woman as well. And so my experiences make it easier for me to write a diversity statement. But I want to emphasize that you can still be a white male or Asian male and write a very good diversity statement, right? So you could be from somebody who's from a majority population, but either recognizes, right, privilege and is sensitive to the experiences of others, and is, like just being aware, right? So just being a good global citizen who is aware of the struggles of others. And it doesn't have to be everything, right? Like, so you don't have to talk about both like BIPOC and gender inequities. If you think that you want to focus on gender minorities, that's your focus. That's still being inclusive, right? So it doesn't always have to be racial. And then really quickly going to the question about the research statement, one thing what I noticed when my research statement started coming together was when I thought about how all of my experiences, the papers I'd written, were all preparing me and leading me to what I wanted to do next, right? So what have you done, and what you have done prepared you for what you're now proposing to do? That was actually a really intense process, like, because there's a time when I was just like, I can't think of these things. But when I really stepped back and I was like, oh, this information I've learned with the papers I published is actually setting me up for the next projects that I want to do. And there's a question in the chat about for primarily undergraduate institutions, do you include undergrads? Yes, you have to say this particular project is suitable for undergraduate, right? And so I had 3 different aims, and in each aim, there was a sub-aim that was specifically going to be done by undergraduates, and it has to be feasibly done by undergraduates. But it doesn't all have to be done by undergraduates. You are able to hire postdocs at primarily undergraduate institutions. And so you can say a postdoc and a technician will do this, and this is what undergraduates are, but you have to show that you're going to integrate undergraduates into your research.
That's a fantastic answer. Thank you very much. I will pick now a question in the Q&A from Adelvan Martins. He's asking, or she's asking, the person asking for, so says, I had a broad experience in science in different research areas. Now I feel like it's harder for me to find an academic job because they are usually way more specific. So what are your thoughts and suggestions about that? Any opinion?
I don't, so I'm just rereading this again. Different research areas. I think for me anyways, and this sort of piggybacks off of what Thelma and Gabriela were saying earlier, but having the big picture in mind is always important. And whether that integrates multiple different fields and areas, that's fine. But I think if you're really passionate about the question and the big picture, and this is what you're pursuing, I think that's going to come through. And I think as a PhD student, postdoc, you're always thinking about the details. But when it comes time to write a proposal and to present yourself, it's people don't care about the details, or it's hard to follow the details. You really have to sell the big picture. Maybe that doesn't answer the question, but that's something I wanted to say.
Yeah, I think it relates, and I see other questions that are related to that about, what will, the selection committee really look for in your CV really to make the selection, right? So,
it depends,
of course, the research, but what else?
I guess it really depends on the selection committees, right? I think some of us would maybe have a hard time applying for jobs. Like all of us have a job now, but we would maybe have a hard time if it was an open position in a biology department where, it's split between a little bit of plant research, some animal research, something else, and then you have competing ideas. So you could be really great and have the support of your peers, but not be able to break through because of political things and other reasons. So you just have to basically get used to some rejection and failure and keep going and believe in yourself and your research. I don't know.
Yeah, Michael.
So one thing that actually helped me was to think about my research question in the context of like Biology 101 class, right? Whatever your research question is, tie it to some, simple, basic biological question and ground it there, and then push it forward into more, something a little bit more contained. And I think you also have to think about that in the context of what the funding priorities are like in the institutions of whatever country you're here. So if it's NSF here, it's genome to phenome, it's rules of life now. And so, how can you package, right? A little bit of this is PR, advertising. How can you wrap your research interest in something that, you would teach in a freshman year biology class, that level, but then you would go further, right? Because if you're trying to get to mechanism or whatever your area is. So, you have to make it accessible to what the department that you're applying to is looking to fill, right? Sometimes it's not a good fit. So then it's not going to work well. So I don't know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you both. Next, we have a question for Gabriela from Cecilia Borassi. She's asking about, so she said the professional career is really interesting, Gabriela. What aspect did you consider when choosing a research group to do a postdoc?
Thank you very much first. And I always, when I was applying for postdoc positions, I try to focus on groups I thought I was a good fit first, and then that their work was of course of interest to me, and that we had common interest. So the postdoc position I got in the US we had a lot of common interests with the PI, and when I had my phone interview, it was a 2 hours phone interview, and we talked not only about the position but my background and her interest and my interest and how we could take the project farther. So I think that a good fit with the lab and common interests are the go-to things to look at when looking for a postdoc position.
Great, thanks, Gabriela. Next, so I have a question. So we have a question about, I think, and Phil in his presentation gave us a hint of what to do and not to do. So how to prepare and be performant during on-site interviews, including shock talk, of course.
Yeah, for me, it was, it's a long day. Generally, I think all of us probably had similar experiences. For me, it was like 2 consecutive days as well. You have to do your homework and know what's going on in the department or institute or whatever, but you should have done that already when you were applying and writing. But I think, yeah, if you're being yourself and you're interested and you know your stuff, I think people are going to notice. And that comes through in your chalk talk. It's sort of like it's kind of like a mean, not a mean, but it's like a PhD. I felt like I was doing my PhD defense all over again, except not in a room full of people that were supportive and proud of me that I just finished my PhD. It was people that were probing and looking to see if I really knew my stuff. So it kind of felt a bit flipped on its head. But and yeah, you can't really practice for that. You can practice your talk and have a really well-oiled talk, and yeah, you know what you want to say for the chalk talk. But once people start asking questions, you're just going back and forth. So you have to know your stuff, and you have to really believe in what you're. If you don't believe in what you're doing, when someone pokes holes at it, you're just going to be like flat-footed, I think.
I can't emphasize enough how important it is to be able to hold a conversation. Yeah. One of the things that I would actually say, so coming from the East Coast and then flying to the West Coast, where both of my interviews had been, I have never, paying for airplane internet was probably the best investment ever, right? Because I had a 5-hour flight and I could sit and read everybody's website and like learn about the people I was going to meet. And, scientists love you to pump up their heads and like, just ask a few questions and they will pick it up from there, right? And your meeting will go. And then they'll do all the talking. Once you've started with a few good probing questions, they'll finish it out from there and feel like they had the best conversation ever, even if it was one-sided. And they'll think you're an amazing person. So that's just my 2 cents.
Mm-hmm. Thank you both. I'm looking at the time, and I think we are slowly reaching the end of the webinar. So we just have time for one last question, and I think it relates to. So there's 2 parts in the question. The first part is, what is your as an applicant for position? What is your ratio about application, interview, and offer? And the second part of the question was, how did you handle rejection when it happened?
I want to know about the second part.
We all do.
Maybe I can answer that quickly. In the last 2 years, I applied for around 30 positions, and I was invited for phone or video call interviews 7-8 times, 5 on-site interviews, and I got 1 offer I didn't take, aside of my group leader position right now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I had similar, but but a bit less. I probably applied for like 25 things within a couple of years, and had, yeah, a handful of phone or mostly Skype interviews with a panel. It's like 10, 15 minutes long. The first one I did, I was totally deer in the headlights. So it's a strange feeling. So there's a learning process there, but then had a couple on-site interviews, and then just got the one offer, and I was happy to get it. And rejection, yeah, I don't know, it's sort of built in. If you've been, publishing and doing the rest of that, you kind of definitely, like, you get your hopes up about things, but yeah, you learn how to manage that and sort of roll with the punches.
I think it is more difficult to don't get an answer. Like, you apply for many positions and you never get a reply. Like, you never know what happened with that position.
I'm still getting I'm still getting like emails that say, thanks for applying, we liked your application, but we went a different direction, and I've started already, and that was like 7 months ago, and it's like, should I email them back and be like, I got something better?
Yeah.
So
knowing is always better than not knowing.
And the rejection is worse when you are a finalist. I remember one of the positions I was in, I was a finalist, and being on the other side, I know how complicated it is to seal the deal with the person that you have your top choice. But it was like they just drag you on for so long and check in with you like every week to say, has anything changed on your end? Has anything changed on your end? And then finally they say, oh, we went with somebody else. That was probably the hardest part for me. But in hindsight, I'm actually really glad I didn't get that job. And, the first time I went on the market as well, I was probably just applying to everything, right? And even if they said, we specifically want somebody working in completely what I'm not working in, I went for it. And so the second time I did, I was a little bit more selective and saying, this is not the job for me. And so I applied for the ones that were a better fit. And so, yeah.
Get used to rejection and grow from it, right? You have your bad day, get mad, whatever, bang a wall, whatever you need to do, and then take a deep breath and think, okay, now what can I learn from this experience? And, what can I do different, or what can I improve upon to make the next time, I can move further. So
that's why it's important to start before you're desperate, right? So if you have 2 more years of funding left, it's probably a good time to start applying.
Great. I think it's a perfect way to wrap up this, today's webinar. So once again, I would like to thank a lot all of our panelists today for being with us, discussing with us, and sharing their insights about the how to land in an academic position. I would also like to thank our audience for asking so many great questions. There are still plenty of unanswered questions, so please, we can keep the conversation going, through social media. You have the Twitter handle of the panelists and member of the planned postdoc on the flyer, so please reach out if you want to. I think stay tuned for all the upcoming webinars organized by planned postdocs. And have a great rest of your day, everyone. Thank you very much.
thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Yeah, thank you, guys.
Yeah, so the panelists, if you guys can stay for 5 more minutes, we can get to know each other.